the HomePod. So this thing was a terrible flop for Apple, and it's such a shame because having been using one since day one, I remember getting mine at launch. I have been using it every single day. As a matter of fact, I have one in my shower. That way I can blast Bad Bunny and Slipknot and sing along to my heart's content. But I also have one here in my tech room. And it's crazy because it has so many features. It has great audio, and yet no one really gave a crap about it. And there's many reasons for that. Today, I'll lay out 4 reasons of why I think the HomePod failed miserably and why its replacement is lagging way behind the competition. I'm talking about the HomePod Mini, a more affordable option. So if any of you guys have the original OG HomePod, you guys might be able to relate, but for those of you that don't, you're really not missing out on a lot, and these are my 4 reasons of why I think it flopped. Let's get right into it. So I think it'd be smart to go over a little timeline of this bad boy's lifespan. It wasn't long, trust me. It was revealed in 2017 at that year's WWDC. But through constant, and I mean constant delays, it actually wasn't released until February of 2018. That's almost 8 months later. So if you think 2018 wasn't that long ago and it was discontinued, it wasn't that recent ago. It was discontinued in March of 2021. And so the thing is, at the time, Apple really wanted to get into the smart speaker space. It really wanted to have its own creation to compete with the likes of Google Home and Amazon Alexa. But man, did it fail miserably. A lot of people pinpoint it to many reasons, but the number one reason that I think it really flopped was because of Siri. Now, Siri, I'm not the biggest fan of, even though I am an Apple fanboy. Like, for example, this thing can't even set up multiple timers, something that other smart speakers can easily do. I mean, you think about it, it seems like such a mundane task for technology in 2018, and yet it couldn't do it. And it's all thanks to the limitations of Siri. And as some of you guys know, Siri is kind of dumb. She just doesn't understand the commands all that well. And don't get me started when you're trying to speak Spanish to it. There's times I want to play some Bad Bunny, such as his latest new hit off of his new album, Titi Me Preguntó, but you have to Americanize it just for it to sometimes understand it. You have to say, play Titi Me Preguntó, and then it may or may not get it. And you just sound dumb saying it, like Siri, come on now. But see, that's the thing. Many of you guys don't know, but Apple actually has 5 different iterations of Siri. There's one for the iPhones, there's a different Siri for the Apple Watch, there's one for the Apple TV, the MacBooks, and one as well for the HomePods. And Siri on HomePods is just dumb and dumber. It's at the very bottom of the totem pole. Like I said, basic commands, it just cannot even get right. Sometimes I'll ask it to turn on my lights, and instead it just makes them even brighter, like, bruh, turn them off, you know? And so the reason that this can't have the fully fledged Siri that's on the iPhone is, for example, you can't ask the HomePod to show you your calendar because this doesn't have a screen. Same thing with the Apple TV. You can't ask the Apple TV to make a phone call because, well, the Apple TV cannot make calls. And that leads me to another point. So when this thing dropped, stereo support for it was missing, and it took forever for us to get that feature. So I did drop more than $700 in copying both this in black and one in white so that I could sync them together and have both speakers play the same audio, which is nice because the audio quality on this thing is top notch, and that's one of the things I'll brush up on a little bit later. But the limitations of Siri were just really dragging this thing behind. I mean, Siri, like I said, isn't the smartest. And so with this being the dumbest version you can get on Siri, which is already a pretty poor voice assistant in my opinion, it just really turned people off the wrong way, and a lot of people didn't pick it up for that very reason. Other intelligent assistants such as Alexa or Google's was just vast superior and still is to this day. It's almost like a fully fledged human being in those speakers. How come we can't get that with Siri? And some of you guys might be wondering, why is Siri so bad? And that has to do a lot with privacy. So I do commend Apple for taking privacy as a priority in terms of us, the consumers. But see, that's where it's lacking. It's not able to pick up on basic information about you to be able to recommend certain things. So whereas with Google's or Alexa's offerings, sure, they might get a little bit more information from you, unbeknownst to you, or you might be aware of it. And that's what makes those home speakers tailor more to you, right? So because Apple's privacy concerns are at the forefront, it really limits Siri. Now, I would have preferred if being asked about the HomePod what information I'm willing to give, and then Siri might be able to pick up on some of my habits and become a little smarter. But because of those privacy concerns, there's just no way to opt in or out. It's just you get what you get with Siri, whose IQ is probably less than that of an eggplant. Reason number 2 that I think it really just flopped is the services that it offers, which is just one. And it sucks. So there's 2 things that you need to know about the HomePod. If you have a MacBook and you also wanted to get, I don't know, the HomePod as an external speaker for it, tough luck, because you need an iPhone or an iPad in order to start using this thing. So if you don't have an iPad or iPhone with an iOS compatible device, then you can't use it, which is such a bummer, especially when you're paying $350 for this thing. And on top of that, Google and Amazon's offerings offer a ton of third-party support. I'm talking Spotify, I'm talking YouTube Music, Pandora, and that's something that the HomePod doesn't offer. You're forced to have an Apple Music subscription, and if you don't have that, then you can't use it either. It really is a limiting factor, and it's really frustrating. Like, honestly, I'm an Apple Music lover. I enjoy their platform, but how many of you guys use Spotify? I'm sure there's a ton of you guys, and it's a decent platform. I'm just so trapped into the Apple ecosystem. Apple Music is just easier for me, but I honestly prefer Spotify a lot more. And the fact that if you are one of those people who prefer Spotify over Apple Music and don't have an Apple Music subscription, well, if you get the HomePod, you're kind of forced into Apple Music, whether you like it or not. So again, the HomePod only supported Apple Music. If you don't have that, rip. All right, and reason number 3 on why I think this was just a huge catastrophic nightmare for Apple was its price point. So look, here's the thing. It is extremely heavy. So this is a top quality smart speaker. You know, it's made out of great materials and it has this really cool mesh on the outside. It has about 6 or 5 different microphones. So what's really cool is even though the music is blasting, I've done it plenty of times before where I'm playing Bad Bunny's latest album at top volume, and from my shower, I can invoke Siri and it works flawlessly. So there's a ton of really good hardware. Like I said, it's very sturdy, it's really heavy, and it also has that really cool little nice display there on the top that just illuminates whenever Siri is activated. But apart from that, why? Why $350? Heck, at the time, you could have gotten yourself an iPhone SE, or with tax, that's about 7 or 6 Apple Watch bands. And you know how serious I am about my Apple Watch bands. So I want to say that Apple, towards the end of its lifespan, I do want to say that they also brought down the price from $349 to $299 in an attempt to get in more sales. But even at $300, my boy, what are you doing? There's way better offerings out there that you could spend $300 on. For the most part, you'll be able to spend much less and get a really top quality speaker. But nope, they came in with that hefty price tag, and it really just made people not want to buy it, because for $300, I mean, that's 2 pairs of AirPods. You can just do so much more with $300, $350 when it launched, that a lot of people just kind of snoozed it off and didn't want it. And I don't blame them. And lastly, my 4th complaint with the HomePod is right back here. It does have a cable. There's no cordless option, and that's a big one for me, because I just recently came from vacation in Florida with both my girlfriend and then a separate trip with the boys. But how cool would it be to have a really nice sounding speaker like this at the beach or maybe by the pool? Unless you're within range into a power outlet, then tough luck. And a lot of people don't know, but the cord actually does come off. It just takes a little bit of effort. Now, I have been lifting at the gym a little bit, so here goes. So there it is, right? It comes off and then it pops right back in. But without the cord, it will not work. Now, this may just be nitpicking on my part, but I really don't understand why Apple wouldn't make a cordless option. Sure, I get it. They tout it as a smart home speaker. So for the most part, it's meant to be at your home or in the office. You know, it's meant to just kind of stay in a general vicinity. But also, there are those occasions where you do go out on vacation. There are those instances where you want a decent sounding speaker by the pool. And it would have been really nice to be able to charge this up with a lightning cable or USB-C instead of being strapped down to this really annoying power cord, you know what I mean? Now, all right, let's cut this guy some slack. Sure, it was expensive. Sure, the services are extremely limiting, and there's no cordless option. But on the bright side, it did have outstanding audio quality. Like, I'm being serious. The bass on this just booms, especially on rock and metal songs. A lot of the times, the bass guitarist is drowned out, but this HomePod really makes every single instrument stand out. every snap of the snare drum, the vocals are up front and center, the mids and the highs and the lows of the guitars and the distortion sound really great. So for audiophiles, this was actually a really great option if you wanted impeccable quality coming from a speaker. And then once again, like I said, there's so many subwoofers going on around it. There's a ton of microphones where you could invoke Siri from just about anywhere. And the microphones were so good, I could have this here in my recording studio and be out in my kitchen and it still picks up on me. And like I said, what I love to do is to combine this with my other white one for a stereo pair. So whatever is playing on this in my room, I can also move the white HomePod to the kitchen and they're both playing the exact same thing, whether that's a podcast, whether that's on Apple Music, or whether I'm airplaying to my Apple TV. Sadly though, like I said, that was still not enough. The audio quality of this thing wasn't enough to entice people to buy it. Sales figures show that only 1 to 3 million of these units were sold. And that's really not a lot when you think about technology. For this to only have, let's just go with the mean and say 2 million sales, I mean, that's pitiful. Not many Apple owners have a HomePod. And Apple sort of tried to remedy the solution by introducing the HomePod Mini, which is vastly inferior to this guy. So while this does come in really nice, fancy, and flashy colors, it does come in at a much lower price point of $99, but much of what this needed is absent here. Sure, there might have been a temporary price solution, but even then, for what you get for $99, it still has the same persistent problems as its bigger, older brother. Siri is still just as dumb as ever, services are still extremely lacking, and don't get me wrong, the audio quality on this is decent, but it is nowhere close to comparison with the bigger HomePod. The bass is really lacking, as you can see. In comparison, it's just a lot smaller, and so there's less space for better woofers. There's less space for the bass to be really dynamic, so you get all of this just in a smaller form factor and a much lower price point. But still, the main talking points of why this was so horrible are still present here. The services is still a big one. You can't have Spotify and have this play directly with Siri. Siri, I keep reiterating, over 5 years, its IQ has only jumped up by half a point. And when we talk about chipsets, more or less, this is a big downgrade. So this guy had the A8 chip, which was the same exact chip found on the iPad Mini 4 before it got the Liquid Retina redesign. So that much power in a speaker and it's wasted? Like, Apple, why? This, on the other hand, has the S5 chip. That's the same chip that is on the Apple Watch Series 5. So this is just confusing to me. Like, why? We have an Apple Watch chip here. We have a slightly outdated chip with the A8, but it still works fine for what this does, and yet there's so many limiting factors. All right, so it really sounds like I was bashing the HomePod, and I kind of was. I use it every day, and as a good home speaker, it's phenomenal. I really like it for what it is and what its strengths bring to the table, and that's the audio quality. Once again, the audio quality on this is top notch, and it's not loud enough to power a whole party. It's good enough to fill an entire room. 2 speakers does the job quite well, but it doesn't get overly loud either. In conclusion, I feel like this is a relic of the past. I really do feel with such low amount of sales this thing got, who knows, maybe in 10 years, this might start to be a collectible of sorts for Apple just because they tried but failed miserably. And I don't think the HomePod Mini is faring any better. I really do think that just people aren't really vibing with the HomePod. And Apple needs to fix the Achilles heel of the HomePods in order for them to be a viable option. Get those services included in there, Apple. Stop forcing people into Apple Music, into those walled gardens, and add a little bit of third-party support. Also, Siri, man, get a grip, dude. Go back to school. Anyway, guys, if any of you guys own a HomePod, let me know what your thoughts are below. For the audio quality, I give this a 9 out of 10. For the services and also the voice assistant and everything else you come to expect from a smart speaker, definitely like a 2 out of 10. It's not there. So overall, I would give it a 5 out of 10 for the bigger HomePod, and for the smaller HomePod Mini, a 4 out of 10, just because its audio quality doesn't fully fill a room. It's a lot smaller. Sure, it's more compact. You get fun colors, $99 versus $349. But honestly, this guy is just enough for your own little home setup. I really wouldn't recommend the HomePod Mini. The HomePod, if you can find one for a really affordable price, I'd say anywhere under $150 now, that's a steal, and you'd mostly be getting it for that audio quality. But I want to know what you guys think. So drop your comments down below. I'm really excited for the new MacBook Air that's set to be released next month. So be on the lookout for that. And make sure to hit that subscribe button with bell notifications so that you never miss out on any of my tech videos. And with that being said, guys, I'm clocking out for now. But I cannot wait to catch you all in the next one.